We're at 50 years hence. And this video is meant to give you a brief overview of what 50 years hence is and wants to do, and so you can make a decision whether you want to stay here or leave. 50 years hence originally is motivated and inspired by an essay by Winston Churchill, who in 1932 wrote about the world as he saw it in 1982, 50 years hence, and described in very weird terms, to be honest, things like solar energy, vertical farming, and gene editing. Now, the current state of things on the planet require us to come up with a vision of the future. Why? Because just like, for example, JFK inspired a whole nation to do things to fly to the moon, we now have to inspire ourselves to do the right things to get towards a good world, a world we actually want to live in, and a world we want to invest our time into building. So this is why we're here. This is 50 years hence. And the way this works is that we created 6 dimensions that segment the world in a way that we can describe it as thoroughly as possible, but also as quickly as possible, because it's a really, really hard thing to imagine the world. It's crazy, actually. So for the last couple of years, we've been writing by ourselves, putting the results into books that we shared among ourselves and the authors. And now we're opening this up to everyone. And we do this by playing a very fun and easy game in different types of formats. Format number 1 is you get together with your friends and you ask these 6 questions that are also below here, down. And the questions are, how do we organize supply on a global level in 50 years? What does that mean? That means everything around clothing, living, housing, food, things like that. How do we produce that stuff? How do we refine it into usable products for us? And how do we bring it to everyone? That's what organizing supply is all about. The second one is, how do we structure society on a global level in 50 years? That's all about governance. How do we make decisions on a global level, but also on a local level and anything in between? What's that process? Currently, in many countries, we use something we call democracy, but it could also be something else, a new form of democracy, who knows? So that's what this part is about. The next question is about, how do we manage knowledge in 50 years on a global level? This entails things like, how do we create knowledge? How do we come to the conclusion, the collective joint conclusion, that something is not just a piece of information, but it's actually knowledge, and we share it, we want to share it. And the second part of it is, how do we share it? How do we make sure that everybody who wants and needs it gets access to it? Then, of course, a very important element is, how do we relate to people in 50 years? How will that change? Will we have families? Will we have romantic relationships? Will we have communities? Will we have cities? How do we talk with each other? What languages do we use? What technologies do we use, etc.? These things have changed dramatically over the course of the last 100 years or 50 years, so they will change again. How do we nurture the body in 50 years? How do we feed ourselves? How do we stay healthy or become healthy again if health has failed? And last but not least, how do we mind the spirit? So That's all about everything that goes beyond the sum total of your atoms or your molecules or whatever level you want to look at. What's that thing that makes you you, and how do we deal with that? So these are the 6 dimensions, and you can play this, for example, by bringing together your friends or your family or your team or a group of people physically, and each of you answers these questions for him or herself. And then you pair into groups of 2 and you share. And then this group of 2 comes up with a shared version of what you are trying to describe. And once you've done that, these groups of 2 get grouped into groups of 4. And you repeat the same thing, groups. And then after that, the next step, group of 8. And then you share what you found in the entire group, if that's more than 8 people. Of course, the numbers can vary a little bit, but you get the gist. That's how we work with this. You can do the same thing online in one session, 2 hours, one afternoon, one day, however much time you want to give yourself. I've done it in 2 hours with 50 people. It was a lot of fun. So it's totally doable. The less time you allow yourself, the less merging you do. So what you omit is that you don't merge and create new shared narratives, but you let yourself inspire by the ideas of the others and enrich your own narrative with that. Or the third version, you spread the whole process over the course of several weeks. So you reserve 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon, you hop on a call or you meet physically, and you do go through the same process, but just in a longer way. So you see, it's very, very flexible, and it's very, very easy to do, and there's a lot of fun. And this little platform here allows you to write your narrative in a structured way, and write many narratives, not only one, and share those with the public. And also group your narrative into a group of people that you work with on that narrative. And maybe even get inspired by people you have never met before, you might not ever meet, but who have a really inspiring vision on the future. So with that, I hope you stay, and I hope you take part, and I hope we get together and get to know each other at one point in one of these sessions and create a beautiful shared vision of the future together.